Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Laura Prada from Telesur Studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. You stay with us. And we begin in the Caribbean, where talks between the Venezuelan government and the opposition are continuing for a second day in Barbados. The Caribbean island Prime Minister Mottley said Barbados is happy to be able to facilitate this dialogue.
We would want to see a very peaceful resolution to the problems in Venezuela. She went on to say, "We are aware of the humanitarian crisis and equally that you can't have intervention that is in breach of the Charter of the UN or OAS." And she asked the media not to chase after the Venezuelan negotiators. Let the people talk. Let the people be in peace. Don't go looking for them. The fact that they have chosen Barbados is a recognition that we can facilitate this kind of discussion without the kind of pressure that they may face elsewhere.
And many Venezuelan nationals anxiously wait for the results that could come across from the negotiation table between the Venezuelan government and the opposition in Barbados, and most of them agree that any solution has to come from within and not be imposed from abroad. Let's see more on the following story.
As always, the objective of the Venezuelan government is to strengthen its diplomacy for peace, while the White House continues to pursue its violent plans for Venezuela. Since 2013, there have been more than 600 calls for dialogue in a framework of reconciliation and respect for sovereignty. Now the talks are in Barbados, as the Minister of Communication announced in a communiqué posted on social media. According to this analyst, the new round of talks show the government's commitment to prevent intervention.
The Venezuelan right is a very bad investment for the United States. It is in every sense an opposition without solid social or political roots. It's completely discredited. It doesn't want dialogue. It has no project for the country. So if the US government has any sense, it should really engage in this dialogue.
Since January, there has been no let-up in the violent plans against Venezuela of the opposition and the international right wing. But President Nicolas Maduro has stuck to his insistence on talks.
We need to show the world that we need peace and calm, that we don't want any kind of war. The only war we face is the one imposed on us by the North American Empire.
As the government insists, the solution must be a Venezuelan one.
President Maduro has always been very clear about one thing, that we recognize the problems we have, but that we can solve them among ourselves as Venezuelans, that no foreign power should come and tell us what we should do, that we should choose our own destiny.
The Venezuelan people are waiting to see what comes of these talks in Barbados, while on the streets, they continue to show their support for the revolution.
And now we go to Colombia, where the Supreme Court of Justice has issued an arrest warrant against former FARC member and current senator for the Common Alternative Revolutionary Force FARC political party, Jesus Santrich, after he failed to appear before the court on Tuesday to testify for alleged drug trafficking charges in the United States. Meanwhile, the FARC party Common Alternative Revolutionary Force expressed their rejection towards Santrich's absence, calling it a serious breach of the peace agreement. According to Santrich's lawyers, his whereabouts remain unknown, but added that his absence could be due to security reasons. He was last week seen publicly a week ago during a news conference where he said he would work together with Colombian authorities to clear up his name.
As you all know, Jesus did not appear before the court. We do not know what the reasons are for his absence, but what we can say is that it's probably due to security reasons. His family has said they think he was kidnapped or forcibly disappeared. That is something that his family will have to make public in their own time. But the truth is he didn't appear before the court today. We have now requested a new date for this hearing.
And 90 Venezuelan migrants living in Ecuador are home world-bound under the Return of the Homeland program, the initiative promoted by the Bolivarian government of Nicolás Maduro that was started in 2018 and has so far provided 32 flights for Venezuelans wishing to return home. Close to 3,000 Venezuelan nationals have been repatriated since the program began. Xenophobia, unemployment, and sexual exploitation in foreign countries have motivated the return of these migrants to their homeland.
The Venezuelan Foreign Ministry has done good by those of us who need to return home. Me personally, I have spent 2 years by myself, without seeing my wife, without seeing my children and grandchildren. I have hope that I will find work in Venezuela. I have faith in this.
And Guyana's President David Granger has proposed the names of 8 nominees for being the country's election commission. The opposition and the government were meeting this Tuesday to discuss the potential candidates, and among the nominees is also the name of the retired Justice James Patterson, who recently resigned as Election Commission chairman. He did so after a Caribbean Court of Justice ruled that the process which resulted in his appointment was flawed. A total of 19 nominees are up for the position, including 11 names were submitted by the opposition leader. And Antigua and Barbuda's government said it has received positive feedback to a proposal that would allow it to own at least 30% of the Scotiabank branch in Antigua. It's one of several Scotiabank branches in the Caribbean being acquired by the Trinidad and Tobago-based Republic Financial Holdings Limited. Prime Minister Gaston Brown said his administration had put 2 options on the table, that a consortium comprising his government and a group of domestic banks should be given the first option to buy the Antigua Scotia branch, and the second is to partner with the Republic Bank, and in that case Antigua would take up to 40% of the shares. Time for a first break here from the South. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Telesur English and on my account, of course, at Laura Pitlesur. Stay with us. We're back with the news. At least 44 people, including a number of children, have been picked up from the Middle and the Mediterranean Sea of Libya's coast. According to the humanitarian group CI, the Alan Kurdi migrant rescue ship was alerted to the flight of the migrants by Tunisian fishermen and a civilian search plane. CI also says a Maltese Navy ship is now on its way to take the people back to land. This is the second group of migrants rescued by the Alan Kurdi in the past week to be taken in by Malta. And Nigeria's National Assembly was on lockdown after shots were fired nearby during clashes between police and Islamic movement protesters. The protesters demanded the release of their leader, Said Ibrahim Zakzaki, who was arrested in 2015 for allegedly attempting to kill the army chief. Police say 2 officers have been shot down and wounded, while 6 other lawmen were injured by individuals using clubs and stones. The police also says 40 protesters were arrested but have not commented on allegations that 2 of those protesters were killed. However, the spokesperson for the Islamic movement in Nigeria has blamed the security forces for the violence. Abdullah Mohammed said the protesters had gone to the National Assembly peacefully, seeking an audience with one of the members of the assembly. He claims that violence only broke out when security forces started firing tear gas canisters at the protesters.
We just moved because our intention is to go to National Assembly and meet Adodugwa and his crew. On arrival to the National Assembly, these people did not come. We moved to the next gate to meet them. The police at the gate started shooting tear gas on us. When we arrived at the gate, we were calm. They started shooting tear gas.
Now to Sudan, where mobile internet services have been restored across the country following a court order ending 5 weeks of a block imposed by the ruling military council. Internet was blocked after a deadly crackdown on protesters camping outside the army headquarters in the capital, Khartoum. 2 weeks ago, a lawyer who challenged the internet blackout won his case, but services were restored for him alone until several people complained. The comes days after the country's military reached an agreement with opposition leaders to share power until elections are held in a 3-year period.
Until now, it's not clear who ordered to cut the internet, and I have a lot of evidence that contradicts the statements made by the telecommunication body and the military council, which denied having any relation to this matter. Also, until now, no one has taken any responsibility of shutting down the internet.
And United Nations has commended African leaders for establishing the world's biggest free trade initiative. United Nations Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed said the African Continental Free Trade Area was an integral move towards self-reliance. The African Union launched the world's largest free trade zone, while other world trade treaties are proving to be a failure. United States, for example, have ditched the Trans-Pacific Partnership, while across the Atlantic, United Kingdom is trying to get out from the European Union and its single market.
I think with the CFTA, that slog to get countries on board, the implications for actually producing the largest trade area, and it producing possibilities for us to now address internally as well as externally what you need to do to make that happen. So, you know, with Nigeria, Benin coming in at the end yesterday, Eritrea saying, you know, we're not going to be left behind, I think you have a continent on the move.
South Africa is set to help Zimbabwe overcome its power shortages crisis. Zimbabwe is struggling to generate enough energy to meet demand due to reduced water levels in Lake Kariba, the country's main power generating source. Just recently, the country managed to clear its outstanding debt with the South African power company Eskom. The South African President Cyril Ramaphosa held talk with Zimbabwe's Emmerson Mnangagwa on the sidelines of the recent African Union summit in Niger, where he expressed willingness to help in solving the power crisis.
Mnangagwa and I had a wonderful bilateral meeting where we discussed a variety of matters, and one of those was energy, because Zimbabwe has a shortage of energy at this point in time. They draw quite a lot of their energy from the Kariba Dam. Now they have been going through a massive drought, and the Kariba Dam water levels have gone terribly low. And so they need more energy. And as a result, they would like, obviously, South Africa to support them. But they have also been able to pay up the debt that they owed to Eskom. He confirmed that, and he said they would like, obviously, further support. And this is the type of thing that we are going to discuss with Eskom, because we've always exported energy to Zimbabwe and indeed to other neighboring countries.
And South Africa's public broadcaster is struggling to stay on air. The government has been stalling on its promise for cash injection to ensure the broadcaster can pay employees' salaries and provide a service for millions of South Africans. Our correspondent there, Matua Malaji, has the story for us.
The SABC is our eyes, our ears, and the mouthpiece of our nation.
I think TV and radio are an important part of building communities, and that's why paying your TV...
The South African government is the major shareholder of the SABC, and without its support, The broadcaster cannot carry out its mandate or even pay employee salaries. Communications Minister says she's not convinced the SABC has a sound turnaround strategy.
A responsive turnaround strategy that must give confidence not only to advertisers, not only to people who are listening to SABC, but to government and everyone that in the next 5 years or 3 years, SABC will not come back and ask for a bailout.
A union representative for workers told a panel discussion on SABC News that government is being disingenuous in its approach to the crisis.
The state as the main shareholder cannot keep us at ransom, because that's exactly what they are doing now. Last month we were complaining whether the salaries will come or not. We have not paid critical stakeholders like Centec, like your electricity bills and so forth. That shows that somehow SABC might be pressured to comply with whatever that we're not so sure what it is.
Another panelist believes the SABC is being manipulated into political pressure.
You know, it's been allowed deliberately to stay in a lurch from crisis to crisis to crisis to serve very narrow political ends. And this is the consequence of that, is that it hasn't been able to develop.
Every passing day means growing uncertainty for the SABC and its employees. If the SABC is forced into a blackout, it will mean information cannot reach millions who can't afford pay TV channels. Matuba Mahlachi, Telesur, Johannesburg.
And like this, we go to a second break here from the south. Stay with us. Back with the news, U.S. civil and human rights organizations have been calling on the Trump administration to close migrant detention centers due to unhealthy living conditions. Lawmakers and human rights activists have strongly condemned the unhealthy living conditions in many U.S. migrant detention centers, where many Central American migrants are suffering from physical and emotional abuse. Some lawmakers demand that the Trump administration close these centers and changes its migration policy that has left 6 children dead. Around 160,000 migrants, including 113 and 200,000 migrant children, have been detained by U.S. authorities so far, and as many as 256,000 have been deported. A new Greek government minister have been appointed after the victory of the right-wing New Democracy Party in the country's general election. The party of the new Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis won the election on the platform of privatization and cutting regulation. However, many analysts said that the previous leftist Syriza government lost because it promised so much but failed to deliver. Now we go to Ireland, where they are concerned about the disorderly Brexit and said it has already taken measures to protect itself from any eventual consequences. Speaking at a European Union minister meeting in Belgium, the Irish finance minister warned of the risk of a no-deal Brexit. The minister went on to express Ireland's commitment to the European Union and hope for fresh support during Brexit talks. More than 3 years after a referendum to exit the European Union, it is not yet clear on what terms the United Kingdom will separate from the bloc.
From the point of view of the Irish government, we now believe that the prospect of a disorderly Brexit occurring is now a significant risk. and the Irish government is meeting today now to review our readiness for dealing with this great challenge. We see the European Union as being an absolutely essential element of the future development of Ireland, and of our political and economic prospects. It has transformed our country, it is our home, and we have very strong commitments to the European Union that we will maintain.
And Chinese authorities have evacuated more than 25,000 people from flood-prone areas since the start of the country's flood season in May. According to the Ministry of Disaster Management, rescue teams have been working round the clock to ensure that people are evacuated from disaster strikes. This is done in order to avoid the loss of lives. Floods caused by heavy rains have battered southern and central China since the end of the month of May. More rains are expected this week in many parts of the country.
We pay particular attention to provinces and regions like Jiangxi, Guangxi, and Hunan, where floods are frequent. We get first-hand information and trying to forecast future trends of disaster. Then we mobilize professional, national level water and mountain disaster search and rescue teams and provision-level flood prevention and emergency relief teams needed to reinforce those provinces and regions. Thus, we make sure we can carry out rescues immediately and reduce economic loss by floods to the minimum.
Now we go to Haiti, where the political crisis is deepening as President Jovenel Moïse is failing to form a new government. Our correspondent in Port-au-Prince, Candy Seidorf, has the details for us. Welcome, Candy.
President Jovenel Moïse has just restarted consultations to form a new government, the third attempt after former Prime Minister Jean Hennessy's appointment was revoked by the lower house of Parliament in March. Parliament is also yet to approve the appointment of Jean-Michel Lapine as First Minister. Opposition senators have on 2 occasions disrupted parliamentary sessions to ratify Lapine's appointment because of disagreements on the composition of the government. President Jovenel Moïse is currently facing protests by citizens demanding his resignation over corruption allegations. The protests have worsened in the last 3 months and Moïse's popularity has gone down. He has, however, continued calling for dialogue with the opposition.
Thank you, Candy. And like this, we come to the end of News of Priest, but of course you can find this and much more other stories on our website as you are seeing it, telesurenglish.net, where you can find opinion article, watch special interviews, and find so much more other materials that we produce especially for you. Continue with us with Telesur, connecting always the global thousands. Until next time, thank you for watching.